What's up everybody, Niklas Crystal here, back with another Lightroom tutorial. Dude, are you trying to be like Peter McKinnon? What? Why would you think that? Bro, you just talk the exact same way like him. What? All of that, what's up everybody, back with another tutorial. Dude, that's his opener. Dude, like, can I just shoot this video without you interrupting me? Go ahead. Okay, so welcome to my first ever Lightroom tutorial. This was probably one of the most requested videos on my Instagram channel. You guys asked, how do you edit your photos? How do you achieve those colors? How can I get your presets? And can I buy your Instagram account for $1,000? Dude, that's a once in a lifetime deal. You should do it, man. Dude, you're so stupid, man. So that's why today I decided to show you my Lightroom editing workflow from beginning to end. I'm literally going to show you how you can transform any photo into a straight up Instagram banger. Let's roll the intro. Bro, we don't have an intro. Dude, why are you laughing, man? I'm not laughing. I mean, honestly, like, why don't we have an intro? Because none of us made one, I guess. Man, you don't do anything else than cleaning our lenses and interrupting my videos. At least someone is cleaning your dirty ass lenses, man. Bro, honestly, just get the fuck out of here and just let me shoot this video, alright? Alright, dude. Chill out, man. Your videos still suck. Okay, all jokes aside guys, welcome to the new video. Today I'm going to walk you through my workflow in Lightroom, how I edit my photos. I'm going to show you step by step which different tools of Lightroom I use in which order in order to achieve that signature look that I always have on my Instagram photos. It's kind of a little bit of teal and orangey, also a little bit brownish, desaturated greens and blues. It's kind of its own look. And also, I'm not often saying that you should follow me on Instagram, but now is the time to follow me on Instagram because at the moment I'm actually posting a lot of additional content on there where I show you behind the scenes of when I shoot videos. I'm also interacting a lot with the audience and asking what kind of YouTube videos they would like to see in the future. So yeah, just head over and check it out if you want to. So for all of the high-end photo edits that I do, which either land on my Instagram channel or go to a client or on my website, I edit them on my MacBook Pro. And I use both Lightroom Classic and Adobe Photoshop. In Lightroom, I do all of the color adjustments, the brightness adjustments, contrasts, and all that kind of stuff. While in Photoshop, I'm doing retouching, I'm doing photo manipulation, I'm cleaning up the image, and I'm adding some other photo effects like flares, grains, and yeah, just additional elements that you put above the normal edit. But as I thought that showing you the whole workflow of editing one image would be way too much for one video, I just separated it into two videos. So this one is going to be all about Lightroom and another video is going to be all about Photoshop. Okay, so the main photo which we're going to edit today is the one of my brother sitting on the Mercedes G-Class at a beach in Mallorca. Perfect setting, perfect car, and it's just one of my favorite photos. So here's the before of the photo and here's the after, which is just mind-blowing what you can get out of raw files. But without wasting more of your time, let's just jump into Lightroom and let's get started. Alright, so I've already loaded my photo into Lightroom and I'm in the develop mode, and the first thing we're gonna do is do some basic brightness and contrast adjustments. And I'm going to do that in the basic tab right here. All of these sliders obviously influence different things. To understand it better, which one influences what, you can just hover over the histogram at the top and you're going to see blacks, shadows, exposure, highlights and whites. So that's basically what the brightness parts of an image consist of. So let's say the darkest parts of the image have a level of 0, so that's completely black, and the brightest parts have a level of 100. Let's start with pulling down the highlights, especially when I edit sunset shots. I pull down the highlights, bring up the shadows, And what you see is that your image already gets more dynamic range. And that's something that always looks good in photos, because our eyes in reality can't really see such a big dynamic range. So that's always going to look a lot more interesting in a photo. So the next thing that I usually do is determine the clipping points of both the blacks and the whites. In order to do that, you can just click on the small symbol in the top left corner of the histogram and also on the top right. You can already see it here at the bottom, which pixels are completely black. So there's no more information in these pixels because they're right at 0. And yeah, now I'm just going to bring down the blacks and I'm going to see, okay, something like that. I don't really need that detail in the lower parts of the image. I would rather have a little bit more blacks in the brighter parts. So something like that. Also, if I increase the whites, I have to push it, and now you're going to see at the top in the clouds that these pixels are completely white. So they are at a value of 100 of brightness. So that's obviously a little bit too much. I don't want my whites to overexpose completely. So I'm going to bring it down a little bit more and something like that. So now that we have the clipping points, I can deactivate both of these symbols. And next I'm going to bring up the exposure just a little bit and add some contrast to bring that pop back to the image that we kind of lost by lowering the highlights and increasing the shadows. So something like that should look fine. So the next sliders we're going to talk about are clarity and dehaze. Clarity, probably one of the most powerful sliders in Lightroom if you like that editing style of really like poppy images. Pop, but if you bring it up way too much, it looks unnatural. You definitely don't want to do that. For this photo, probably like 26. And when it comes to the dehaze slider, what the dehaze slider basically does is dehazing your photo. Oh wow. So if you have a lot of fog and there is no contrast in the image, so basically here in the back we have a little bit smoke, we have a little bit fog, so there is not that much contrast in the sky itself. But if I bring up the dehaze, then the sky is just going to get that pop, but at the same time obviously also the foreground is going to be dehazed. For this case you want to use it really slightly. I would bring it up a little bit maybe. And next up would be the crop. Crop is at the top left corner here. If you just click on the symbol and then you just select the right format for the platform where you want to publish the photo. So it obviously depends where you want to publish it, website, Instagram. So for Instagram it would be 4:5. I'm just going to pick that format and I am going to look for a nice composition. So I don't really like that door handle. It's kind of distracting a little bit. It looks a bit cleaner if I just cut that out. Also, if you pull outside of this crop graphic, then you can just adjust the angle of your photo. You always want your horizon to be leveled. Something like that. That's fine. I'm just gonna hit done. Okay, so that already looks a lot better than in the beginning. If I just hit Y on my keyboard, I can see a before and after. That's already such a huge difference. Lightroom is a beast. Okay, so next up, what I usually do is head into detail, and I'm just going to take care of some noise and also sharpen my image a little bit if needed. You don't need to do this all the time with good cameras. You don't have to do it. It always depends on which look you go for, obviously, but in this case, I would pop in a little bit. Pop! So what I usually do is increase the sharpening a little bit to something like 50. So what I usually want is the sharpening to only influence the edges of my subject. So I'm going to hit Option on my keyboard and drag the masking slider. And what you see is that now it kind of shows you which parts are influenced by the sharpening. Only the white parts will be sharpened and the black parts will be spared. So I'm going to bring it up to something like 80 something. And now all of the edges are sharpened. I'm also going to increase the noise reduction a tiny bit in this case because we had some noise in here. And now if I turn it off and on, you can see how it improves the image. You see all of this like color noise in here. It doesn't really look nice. So I'm just gonna turn it on and yeah, we got it fixed. All right, so next up is colors. Okay, so we're just going to head down to calibration. Also one of the most powerful tabs in Lightroom, especially when it comes to colors for creating looks and all that sort of stuff. You first have to understand how this really works, that you can make the changes you want to make, because I didn't really understand it for quite some time. Obviously now I know what it's doing. You have all of the different primary colors. You have red, green and blue primary. And all of these sliders adjust all of the colors of the image. It's not working the same as HSL, where you are able to influence just one specific colors. For example, I influence orange in this case, and it's only changing that color. Color calibration works differently. It influences all of the colors, as you see if I drag this to the left. So basically what it does is it influences the colors to a specific degree, depending on how many percent of that primary color are in the pixel itself.
What?
That was complicated, right? So if you just hover over the image with your cursor, you can inspect how many percent of each primary color are in a pixel. If you look at the top right corner below the histogram, you see the three percentages R, G, and B, which stands for red, green, and blue. And if you hover over, for example, that bluish part over the window here, you see, okay, so it's 47% blue, 41% green, and 33% red. And obviously you don't want to just look at all of the different pixels, but you just have to get a feeling for how this tool works. If we just open up a color wheel here, we see that it does influence the whole color wheel. If we just slide it, you see how these colors shift. But on the other hand, if we use the HSL sliders, and I'm just going to take, for example, the blues and bring down the saturation, you see that only the blues are influenced. So you really have to keep that in mind. If you use the color calibration tool, it's going to change all of your colors. So in order to achieve the look that I always do, I'm bringing down the blue primary. You can kind of call that slider the teal and orange slider if you want to, because it pushes the blues a little bit more to the cyans, and it pushes the oranges a little bit more towards the reds. So it kind of creates that teal and orange look. I also bring up the green primaries. I bring up the red primaries most of the time a little bit. So you see, if I turn it off, it looks like that, and if I turn it on again, you kind of have that really cool look in your image. Pop! So next we're going to head over to the HSL tab, which stands for Hue, Saturation, Luminance. So what you can do with this tool, as I said before, you can influence specific tones, specific colors. So for example, if I pick the orange hue slider, I can influence the hue of the orange tone. If I take the saturation slider of the blues, I can lift up the saturation and I can lower the saturation of the blues. And this is super powerful because you can tweak exactly how you want your colors to be. So there's no real recipe on how to tweak these sliders to get the perfect image, because it always depends on your photo, which tones are in your photo, what kind of look you're going for, and all that kind of stuff. So it's basically a lot of practicing, a lot of try and error in order to know how this works. So for this image, I would probably go up a little bit with the reds. You see the reds are not influencing that much, but they're influencing. If we zoom in here on my brother's face, you see that the red tones are in my brother's face. So obviously pink looks unnatural. I'm gonna go up a little bit into the oranges, gonna head out again. With the orange tones, I'm going to go a little bit more towards the red to make the sky pop even more. Pop! Then the yellows. Yellows are always a thing. Obviously with sunsets you can't go much further to the green side because you see that it just looks weird. There's no green in the sky unless it's polar lights. But also if you bring down your yellow tones a little bit too far to the left side, you see that they just merge with the orange tones, which can look cool for some looks, but I don't really like it that much anymore. It just doesn't really look that vibrant anymore, especially when it comes to sunsets. I like to keep the yellows at their tone, maybe lower it a little bit, so that you still have this color contrast between the different orange and yellow tones. That's actually something I always try to do, is to create some kind of color contrast in an image. For example, blue and orange, where you just kind of create a contrast with the colors themselves and not with the brightness levels. If we, for example, go to Basics tab and just boost up the temperature, you see this looks just boring because there's no color contrast going on in here. So let's have a look at the green tones. In order to see where the tones exactly are, you can always push it up and down and you will see that, okay, the green tones are down here in the wheels. And obviously I don't want them to look green, I want them to look yellowish. So I just bring them down all the way. You can also just pick this color picker here and you can just hover over the image and just scroll down or up, and you're going to see that the sliders which influence that part of the image are going to be adjusted. I'm gonna bring the blues a little bit more to the cyans, the aquas a little bit more to the blues. Purple and magenta can't really be found in that many images. Saturation, I always lower the blues a little bit. In this case, I would also lower the oranges a tiny bit. And when it comes to luminance, you kind of have to watch out that your image doesn't fall apart. If I just bring down the orange luminance completely, you see, damn, that looks nice. Yeah, with luminance you really have to watch out. You can do minor adjustments. I could bring down the luminance a tiny bit to even get more detail in the sky, but you want to do this carefully, as you can easily kind of like fuck up your image. So we've already done quite a lot of adjustments to this photo. If we look at the before and after, you can see, okay, this is a different image. But there's one more thing that I like to give my colors that final touch, which is heading over to the tone curve. A lot of people actually use the tone curve in the RGB selection to adjust their brightness levels. I don't really do that. I manage all of the brightness levels through the basic panel. But I use the tone curves with the different primary colors. So there's one for red, green, and blue. And what you can basically do with these curves is adjust the tones for the different brightness levels. So at the bottom left corner is 0 again, complete blacks. In the top right corner is 100 complete whites. Depending on where you grab this curve, you can influence how present the specific primary color that you've selected up here is going to be at that brightness level. So if I pick it all the way at the top at the whites, you see if I pull it to the left, the whites are getting really blue. If I pull it down to the right, you see that it's getting yellow, because yellow is a mix of green and red. So that's just how it works. So in order to do the adjustments correctly, I would always suggest to make just like 3 clicks here. One at the bottom, one in the middle, and one at the top. So you have your shadows, your midtones, and your highlights, and now you can just drag those to your liking. So it always depends on your tastes, how you want to tweak those colors. You don't really have to do big adjustments to do a lot in the image itself. You see, if I bring it all the way out here, it's just fucked up. So I like to bring down the reds a little bit in the shadows, and also the greens a tiny bit in the shadows, to just give the shadows an even colder look to it. Actually, I like to bring up the blues and the whites a tiny bit to even add more color contrast to the image. In this case, there's probably a bit too much red in the midtones. Gonna bring that down a little bit as well. You can also just use the picker at the top left here again to choose the right brightness that you want to influence. For example, if I want to influence the white parts here, I just pick it, pull it up or down, I influence that specific part. So I feel like something like this would look nice on that photo. If you deactivate the tone curves, you see a before and an after, and you see that it really pushes that color contrast even more if you know how to do it correctly. Woo! There's actually no protein shake in here. This is just water. My tap water is not cold enough, and I just like ice cold water. Okay, so before we talk about the last step to make this picture look perfect, which is also super important, I want to talk to you about something else, which is something that I've been working on for probably the last 1 or 2 years, and that is, let's build up some tension, my first presets pack. Yeah, I just released my first presets pack. I'm so hyped about it. They're called Signature Presets, and they include 5 different unique looks in order to achieve the same look that I have on my Instagram photos. If you don't know what presets are basically a filter that you can apply in both Lightroom on your computer or also in Lightroom on your mobile phone. And yeah, it just makes editing a lot easier because you save a lot of time. And the reason why presets are so powerful is because it takes care of all of the settings settings that we just talked about, the color calibration, the tone curves, the basic adjustments, all that stuff is already baked into a preset, and you just need to click on it once to get that same look. And presets in general give you basically two benefits. First of all, you save a lot of time in the editing process because you don't have to manually adjust all of these settings. And secondly, it also makes it a lot easier to kind of find a style and to just be consistent with your editing so that they don't just look completely different, especially when it comes to Instagram feeds. That looks really nice if they all have the same look. So I'm just quickly going to show you how these presets work on the photos. So if we go back to the before, and on the left side we have the presets tab here. I've already installed the signature presets, so if we just hover over the different presets, you see which effect they have on the specific image. We can also go on some other photos like this one, mellow browns, more brownish colors, orange deset, which has more of a desaturated blues look and only like brings out the orange colors, silk, which is a little bit softer, Sunkissed, probably my favorite of them all. I just love this preset, works great on anything. Sunsets also during the day. This is really like, I think this is the best presets I ever made. And also teal and orange, which is just a really nice teal and orange look. Yeah, it's super easy to use these presets. We can also go over some more photos here. Mellow browns, orange deset, silk, sunkissed, teal and orange, all those different looks. So yeah, I'm convinced by these presets, and if you want to buy those, you can head over to my shop, which is shop.niklaskristel.com. I actually also worked a lot on the shop itself because I wanted to make it really nice looking and that it explains everything and all that sort of stuff. So if you just head over to presets, I'm going to explain everything in detail, what is included, how the presets work. You can also test out the different presets on specific images. Also a color palette which shows which different looks there are. But also besides the signature presets pack, I created a free preset pack for you guys in order for you to also edit without spending any money. Obviously the signature presets are going to be a lot better and a lot more work went into those. But if you want to get the free presets pack, just go to my website shop.niklaskristel.com, enter your email for the newsletter and subscribe to the newsletter, and you will get a download link right away and you can download them for free. This is something I've been working on for quite a long time, so I wanted to make sure to show it to you guys. But let's jump now into the last step of finishing our photo. So the last step is going to be to make selective brightness and color adjustments to specific parts of the image. So the tools that I mostly use for these selective adjustments are the graduated filter, the radial filter, and the adjustment brush. And the goal of these selective adjustments is to draw the viewer's attention towards my subject and to get rid of any other distractions. So in order to see which parts of your image are influenced, I always like to increase the exposure to a maximum, and therefore when I just drag a filter now, I see which part of the image is going to be influenced. If I hold down Option, I can drag the filter in a different way, and if I hold down Shift, it's just going to make a 180-degree angle and it doesn't move in another way. Then I can just lower the exposure. I can bring down the overall exposure. It looks a little bit greenish here, so I'm going to put it a bit more towards blue and also the tint a bit more towards red. And I'm going to do the same at the bottom here, also bringing down the exposure a tiny bit, maybe even lowering the saturation again. So next up we're going to use the radial filters, and I use radial filters a lot to even out the exposures throughout the whole image, to kind of make it all look a bit more polished, if you would want to say that. So I'm gonna make one right here, where I just drag it up. With this one, I am probably going to lower the highlights even more so that we even have more detail in the sky. And I'm going to bring up the saturation a tiny bit. Down here, that's what I talked about. This part is a little bit darker than all of this area. So I'm going to bring one over here. And I'm going to increase it a tiny bit, something like that. And you see that it's just getting more even down here. So next up would be the adjustment brush. And this one is super powerful. Probably the one that I use the most of all of these. You can just kind of like paint around and influence specific parts of your image. But there's one thing which is really, really helpful when it comes to adjustment brushes. And that is auto mask. Just activate it down here. And now you can just paint around your subject and it will automatically only influence specific parts depending on the contrast between it. So it's going to do an auto mask. That is super helpful because now I can, for example, paint the sky and only influence the sky. So in this case, I actually want to light up my brother because it's a little bit too dark. So I'm going to brush it all here. So I've selected all of these parts and I'm just going to bring down the exposure and raise it up a little bit again. And then I'm going to increase the highlights even the whites and also the clarity of my subject. Clarity in my subject makes it pop even more. Pop! I would create a new one, for example. This part is too bright for me and a little bit greenish. I'm gonna paint over it, bring it down, adjust the tint to make it look the same way as the rest of the jacket, bring down the whites and the overall exposure, and you see that you can just kind of polish your whole image by doing these small adjustments. I would also just paint over the whole car here because it is a little bit too dark for my taste. Bring up the whites, the clarity and the highlights, and you see that it just pops. It just pops. It just pops. So yeah, these are all of the different steps. This is now the finished photo. If we hit before and after, we see, wow, we really made a big change to this photo. And yeah, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that it was helpful to you. If you don't want to miss out on any of the upcoming videos, make sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on the notifications. And also a small reminder, if you want to check out my presets, go to shop.niklaskrystal.com or just hit the link in the description. That's it for today, guys, and I wish all of you guys a great day. Peace out.